Welcome to Pen the Writer's Utopia. Listen, we have a fantastic show tonight. All right. It's one of my absolute favorite people that's going to be joining me tonight in the Utopia to talk all about writing for network TV. I know you excited to get on into it. Me too. So go on, make sure you like, share, and join the conversation in the comments. It's Pen the Writer's Utopia, baby. Come on in. Welcome to Pen the Writer's Utopia. Listen, I can't even contain my excitement tonight, okay? Because the guest that we have joining us tonight, listen, she is one of my absolute favorite people. She's a writer and a producer, y'all. And she is my mentor. She's none other than Miss Leilani Downer. Welcome, Lonnie.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. I listen. I told you in the beginning, but guys, I told her, I said I miss her face. Listen, I feel like I have not seen her in forever, but she's such a gem. And if you don't know her, I'm telling you, stick around because you're going to want to know her. Okay. So, Lonnie, why don't you tell us? You have such an impressive resume. Like, it's what you say, impressive resume with over decades of experience. So tell us some of the highlights.
Right. Well, I've been in the business for a while, and I've probably worked on a lot of shows you've seen, like I call it iconic television. I go back to the 90s. So my first writing job was on a show called A Different World. And
yes,
everybody really loved that show. And so I worked with, a lot of different people coming and going. I'm a television writer, but my genre, as I started out, was comedy. And then I segued into other forms of entertainment and other styles of writing. But I started in the studio level as a writer's assistant, and then worked my way up in terms of writing and eventually producing some of the shows that you've seen. So A Different World was my first. And then I went on to write for other shows like Hanging with Mr. Cooper and Sister and Fresh Prince, of course. Stayed in that area, kind of comedy, fast comedy, family comedy, things that were really fun to work on. And for some people, it's what they grew up with. It's what they remember fondly.
Yes.
Yes. And some of it's coming back, as you know, remakes and reruns and on Netflix and places like that. So that's fun to see. Another generation.
Absolutely. And I was going to say those are like the classics, because I'm not going to tell any lies. Like, it is the highlight of my day when I'm flicking through the channels and I find the old reruns of A Different World and Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Like, that used to be my thing to entertain myself, even as recently when they ran the reruns on what's that, Nickelodeon at night, Nick at Night. And that was my way of going to sleep, getting some good old fashioned comedy. So yes, you listen, and you're still working in the business because you have a show that you wrote for on Netflix currently, Julie and the Phantoms, which my son absolutely loves that show. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I was shocked by the ending. I'm like, okay. And my son is like, we need a season 2, mommy. I said, I'm going to make sure I tell Miss Lonnie we need a season 2.
Well, they're still waiting on a pickup for season 2, but that was a fun show to work for because it was music, a lot of music involved in it, and a really young cast. And it was, kind of like a throwback to what I grew up doing in the industry in terms of writing and kinds of writing. And then getting to work with some really nice professional people. That was great too.
Awesome. Yeah. And then let's not forget your movie writing, because we talk about you being TV, but you also
Mhm.
wrote a film for Hallmark,
Yeah.
Mary
Married
Matrimony.
Matrimony.
Yes.
Spoiler
Mm-hmm.
alert, they get married in the end. But but yes, I love writing film. It's, I think every television writer has the dream of eventually writing that longer form piece, a feature film, or, whether it's independent or studio level. I think a lot of writers look to that. That's kind of like, the thing they aspire to. And even when
Yeah.
I was working on set, I always thought, I had movie ideas that I wanted to express. So, and right.
Yeah. And now you're doing it. You have the cream of the crop. You are expanding to it all. And you were working on a book too. Listen, y'all, she's not just film. She's expanding her wings, baby, as
Yeah,
a writer, which is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So I know most of the people that are tuning in tonight, you're like, you saw writing for network television, and most of you are looking forward to some information about that. So I'm not gonna keep talking about her resume because I love her. I love talking about her shows, but we'll get into some tips for you. So, writing for television. You guys don't know, I participated in a program, and as a result of me being in that program, I met Lonnie or Leilani,
Mhm,
and she became my mentor, and
mhm.
she's been with me through some tears, because I've had some tears, I've had some frustrations. um and she'll tell me when to get myself together. She'll tell me when, you need to work on this, revamp this, look at this. Or she even fights for me, y'all, when she feel like people were doing me wrong or wasting. She be like, they just playing games with you, don't work with them no more.
Well, the business, as they say, it's not easy. There's no A, B, and C to it. If it were, we'd know that, I do this and then I'll do this and then I will have a show on television. And that's not always the case. You kind of really have to fight for your career. And, when I say fight, a lot of that means just really sitting down and focusing on it and owning it. I would say,
Yeah.
I had a mentor. My mentor once told me that, you are the one who decides your career. You decide when it begins and you decide when it ends.
Yeah.
And so, that I think that that's really great information to go with, because it
Yeah.
is, a lot of it is on you, and to
Yeah.
try and make something happen for yourself and to believe in you. That's the big thing.
Absolutely. And that's one thing you definitely instilled in me early on. You were like, you're more ready than you think you are. I remember you telling me that. Like, the moment you realize you're ready, I see that you're more ready than you think you are.
Mhm.
But you have to realize it too. And I remember that was a key nugget you gave me. So, in getting into TV writing, right? So, a lot of people are doing independent things now. It's so much more flexibility than it was when I
When
was,
I started.
really, really writing. It's a lot more flexibility. And I'm not trying to date myself, even not trying to date myself. But my question to you is, I know that the Writers Guild used to have a program where they will put writers assistants, help you become a writer's assistant on different TV shows. And
Mhm.
at one point, I know that they canceled that program. Is there
Mhm.
anything for an aspiring TV writer? Is there any other programs like that program that would get you placed on the show existing today?
There are actually a lot of programs like that. It leans itself more toward diversity and inclusion,
Okay.
because of, the whole, it's exactly what we're going through as a world right now. Every part of the world is looking at the fact that there needs to be more inclusion and more stories need to be told about
Yeah.
different kinds of people. And when I say inclusion or diversity, we often think of people of color. We often, women. Age can
Right.
be a diverse situation that people are
I
in.
love that. Yes.
Yeah, or even
Mm-hmm.
walks of life that they've lived through, like military or whatever. So there are programs out like that. Almost every studio has an arm that deals with diversity, And, like they have writing programs where you do have to do the work. You have to
Right.
have something to show. And this because
Yes.
the program that you got into,
Right.
and you went forward with that, but you had something that you could show that got you into that program. And so that, I would, there is opportunity out there. There's going to be a lot more because people are getting woke, and
Right.
there's a lot of the studios are going to be doing a lot more and stressing a lot more. But most of the studios have some kind of diversity, and that's something that needs to be investigated and looked into, and apply, and you would apply to that and try and get in.
Right. Now, the key thing that you gave, and I'm sure any writer that's watching that is really looking to do film and television, you automatically know you have to have some type of script in order to even be looked at. Most people, especially, I'll say most people don't take them unsolicited, but you
Right.
got to have it in your repertoire if you're going to apply to be on the show. What are some of the things that are important to include in a spec script?
Well, okay. First of all, just to go back a little bit, you do need a spec script, or so it's a writing sample, and spec is short for speculation. It's just the idea behind it. The idea that you're writing something that you're not going to sell per se, but it's going to be a catalyst to get you where you want to go. And you think of a spec script, if you were a photographer and you had a portfolio of the pictures you've taken, and you're going after a photo job, a photo shoot job.
Yeah.
And you would open your, portfolio and show what kinds of photos you can take. You can take pictures of families, babies, party pictures. Well, that's what a spec script is. It's you opening your portfolio and saying, I can write comedy, or I can write drama, or sci-fi, or whatever else is out there. So when you're writing a spec script, you want to write something that really shows your talent. So I often, I also teach. I teach a half-hour comedy, at different parts of the country. And one thing I always tell my students is to find a show that you love, because a spec script is you taking a show that's on air, and
Yes.
the whole idea behind it is you mimic it. You become a mimic so that you can show that you can write for television and you can write those characters. So find the show that you love. That's important, because if you find a show you love, that means you've watched it, you know the characters, you have a sense of what
Yes.
they would say, what kind of storylines they would find themselves in. And it does a lot of the work for you. That's where I would go with that. I tend to tell people, find the show you love, write it as best you can with all of that in your head, and then that's the one that you show to people. And go from there. The studios are looking for spec scripts, but also original material. If you have an original idea, that's another thing that you can come up with in order to get a job
Yeah.
in television.
Awesome sauce. And I definitely, just to piggyback on that, that's definitely something I know you want to do, because when listening to, or when you're watching the show, or if you're writing something for a show that you're watching or that you love, you kind of get the voice of the character in your
Mhm.
head, which is important, because as you told me many a times, if you haven't watched this show, or if you don't have the voice of the character, these showrunners are going to know that. They're going to know, oh, you really don't watch this show. You just picked it because you thought it would work. So I think that's great advice. And I'm telling you guys, I know she's the professional, right? She knows it's great advice. But make sure you know your shows, because yeah, I've had moments where I literally had to binge watch shows to get the voice of the character.
You
It's
know,
an adventure, but go ahead. I'm
mhm.
sorry.
I was going to say, when I started out, there were 3 networks. I'm dating myself. There was no, the internet was not what it is today. And when I would go in to take a meeting, I really had to do a lot of homework. And when I
Yeah.
would pitch ideas, because you don't want to pitch ideas that a show has already done. You want to be fresh. And
Yeah.
it was hard to, you had to kind of like, well, did they do this? I'm not sure. I'm going to pitch it anyway. Now we have the internet, and you can go on and find out every show a show has done.
Yes.
So you can protect yourself from redoing something they've already done, and being able to deliver something fresh for them. So, that's there. We have these, everybody can binge. Most, shows end up on Hulu or some other platform, and you can go back and binge the show that you love and really study it. And that's part of writing. Good writing is done by those who study the craft. And you study by watching, and you study by reading scripts as well. If you're not one that knows what a script looks like or has never read a script, then you need to start doing that. And there are websites that you can get actual written scripts from, get familiar with what it looks like on the page as well as what it looks like on screen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't be like I was. The first time I submitted a script, it wasn't a script. I wrote it like I saw in the literature books, y'all, with the Leilani said ... in this room, and then the line. Don't be like me, because my 10 pages wasn't, my whole script was somebody else's first 10 pages. Don't do that. Now there's way more access, like she said, and there are plenty of sites, because like you said, dating ourselves in the beginning, you had to wait for it to be mailed to you. Now you have access to get it right away.
Right. A PDF is just a click away. And I would also say, if you're serious about writing, get yourself a writer's program software.
Yes.
Make your script look like a script. That's going to take you far, because I've been in situations where I've had to read other people's work. And when it comes in, a little less, not looking like a script, you start judging the book by its cover. And you start to think, this person isn't really a writer from the moment you see that script. So you want to give yourself a leg up and invest in a software program. And some of these software programs, again, are free. There's certain ones that are free out there, or they'll give you, if you're a student, I don't know how much of your audiences are filmmaker students, but there are deals for students out there for software. And, get yourself the right tools. You can't build a house without the right tools. You can't make a cake without the right tools in the kitchen.
Yes.
So think about it that way. As a writer, something you want to invest in, you're investing in yourself, invest in that software program, invest in the tools around you.
Absolutely. So I want to tap back just a little bit to something that you shared when we were talking about this spec script submissions, whether you do one for a show you're really familiar with or do an original. So for someone that is interested in submitting an original script to obtain a TV position or a position, what would you recommend to make sure they have within that? We know it's a good story, but is there any other ingredients that they need to put into that cake?
Well, yes. When you write an original idea, it's called a pilot for television. And so writing a pilot is a lot different from writing a traditional spec script. A pilot requires you to create the world, to create characters, and then create a world in which your characters exist. And, when you create the world, it's like how they relate to the world, how they relate to each other, who's in their life, all of that. So you are really taking on a project when you do a pilot. And it's not to say that you shouldn't. You probably have a great idea, but great ideas are worth a lot. But you have to be able to execute them. And so when in writing that pilot, you want to make sure that you make it clear who the main star is, who the character focus is, and then what their motivation is. I'm really big on motivation. When I talk to writers, when I read scripts, I'm always looking for the motivation as to why people do the things they do, or why are they in the situations they're in. Now, you can create a character that's active or reactive. An active character has a pursuit, a goal in mind. They want to, sometimes they want to solve things,
Mm-hmm.
and shows are built around that, in terms of, what the character wants. You start with what the premise is, what the character wants, and then how they live out the pilot in getting it. And so, long story short, if you're writing a pilot, know that you're taking on a little bit bigger challenge. Know that you need to develop the character as much as possible, because this is the first time we've seen them. When you're doing a spec script, it's a little easier. We've seen those characters before. It's a shorthand that you're dealing with. With a pilot, you're telling me everything I do not know. So you want to really develop your characters. You really want to put them in a world that has reality to it, even if it's a science fiction piece, or it's based on a dream. And what I mean to say with that is, anything that you create will have rules to it. And so you come up with that rule, a real rule for your science fiction, and that's the world you place them in, and you stick with the reality that is your science fiction. I hope that makes sense. But
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you just want to create this world, create this character, and then when you're doing the pilot, you want to make sure that it kind of like the series has legs to it, that it can go. It's not a movie, because sometimes people write and they think they're writing a series, but actually, when I read it, sometimes I think this is a movie, because this doesn't go any further than what they've written. So you want to think about that when you're writing a pilot, because it is a pilot. It will be judged as a pilot,
Right.
and so you want to make sure that those elements are there.
Yeah, and I totally get that, because if you're looking for a series, it has to be able to go somewhere or have further development. I read somewhere not too long ago, where I was reading something about writing, and they were saying you always want to, when you're doing something like a pilot, or you want to make sure you're saying why now. You're answering the question of why we're starting right here, right now, like why now. And
Mhm.
I would gather that for a TV pilot, that's what you want to know. Why are we starting where we are? And then why is this important, and where are we going? And how much further can we go
Right,
from this point?
right.
So that totally makes sense.
And is your character interesting enough to carry us
Yeah.
through, hopefully, seasons of what they're going through? And some shows start. They're called Genesis pilots,
Hmm.
which means they start at the beginning. Like, if you're doing a pilot about a married couple, the Genesis pilot would show them getting married the first day of their wedding, the day of their wedding. But
Right.
that's a Genesis pilot. But maybe you don't do a Genesis pilot, but you, like you were saying, why now? You enter into the story about this married couple when they're on the brink of having children, or maybe on the
Yeah.
brink of getting divorced. And now it's a whole new world for them. So you kind of want to bring us into the story with the main character and introduce us to the world that they've entered into. And in most comedies, when you're doing a pilot for a comedy, your character is entering into a whole new world on the paper. Something
Yeah.
happens that jiggles their world and enters them into a new situation. Whether it be, Will in Fresh Prince, and now he's living in Bel Air, that kind
Right.
of thing. So, think about that when you're writing.
Yeah. Now, Alan, which is one of my faithful viewers, he just said, I'm surprised that a producer would take a spec script on an existing series. And so I wanted to go back and get that, because I knew you would explain it too. So I would say a producer would accept that, because it's just a demonstration of how well you can write. So
Right.
there's two ways that you're doing it. So that if you're writing the script to sell to the show, there's the possibility that you can do that. So that would be a reason why they would accept your spec script on their show, because you're selling it to them. You're selling them that particular story. Or in this case, if you're writing for the show, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know it used to be a rule back in the day that you wrote something similar to whatever show you were going to go to, but not necessarily for the show. Sometimes you would, maybe for Grey's Anatomy, you might submit a Chicago PD show or something like that that was along the genre. So I know back in the day that was the rule, and Lonnie can clarify that for us. But for the most part, you're writing something that you're familiar with just to demonstrate your ability to write in that drama. So you're writing for something that's current. And that's another thing. So we want to grab that too. Don't go in there today trying to write a script for the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, which is no longer on air, submitting it as your spec script. You can't do that. It has to be with something that's current or that got canceled, or if it's not something that's on air now, it got canceled no more than a season ago. Did I stick to my rules right?
Well, yes, a lot of what you said is right. The reason why, Ellen, that you would write a spec script is because you want to show that you can write. And the truth of the matter is, it's the kiss of death. If you want to work on Grey's Anatomy, to write a Grey's Anatomy and hand it to them and say, here, look, I can write. Because people are people, and they start to think, nobody writes my show like I write my show. So that's why you want to write a Station 19 and show it to Grey's Anatomy, something similar. But you don't want to write a Grey's Anatomy. It's hard to get a job on a show that you want to get a show on if you write that show and show them the show. You've got to do something similar, very close to it. A family comedy with a family comedy, a drama with a drama that takes place in like a hospital or something of that nature. So that is exactly right. The other thing is you want to write something that is on air, because and I would even say don't go back a year. It has to be current on air, and people kind of have to know it a little bit. You don't want to teach somebody or that there's something on television that they haven't seen, and that's the tricky part, because some people complain, a lot of producers, a lot of networks complain that they keep getting the same spec script over and over again. Everybody wants to write that Grey's Anatomy, and they have 10 Grey's Anatomy, and they don't want to read those anymore. So when somebody turns in something fresh that's not Grey's Anatomy, that's the first thing they grab on their desk. So you kind of have to play that game where you find something that's on television, but it's not the most, popular show, I guess, the most watched show. It could be a show that just, it's premiered, it had a season run, it's going to come back. And I'd write something like that. I'd get into something like that, or something that I think that as writers, we have instincts, and we know what's good out there, and we know what everybody's talking about. And maybe there's something that you can say, well, even if you do write a Grey's Anatomy or something of that nature, do it in such a way that it stands out. That's the other thing. You kind of have to write a spec that captures attention, so that if they've read 10 Grey's Anatomy, when they read your number 11 Grey's Anatomy, they're like, wow, this is good. So, it's really calling on you to use your talent, to do as much as you can to get noticed. And it's the same for a lot of different positions in entertainment, whether you're in front of the camera or not. Getting that job, that prime job, you kind of have to go the distance and really think about, put time into what you're going to write, what's going to best show your talent. If you're not the kind of person that has 3 jokes on a page and writes really, fast dialogue, then you might write a dramedy, still comedy, but it's a little bit, less of that immediacy of funny, Fresh Prince with 3 jokes to a page, that's the old style. But, a lot of shows came in that were dramedies that did a little less of that and were a little bit more leaning toward reality. In terms of the writing of it. So think
Yeah.
about that when you're choosing something.
Awesome sauce. Oh, I hope you guys have been enjoying these nuggets of wisdom. Because look, I just happened to look. We were having such a good time and so much good information, y'all. We almost out of time. Can you believe it?
Oh,
Ah, we're almost out of time, but this has been such a great, great, great conversation. Um, I always want to leave the floor open. So, what I would say, all the information that we've gone over tonight, Lonnie, if you could leave one thing with our viewers tonight, what word of wisdom would you like to leave with them?
well, I'm going to speak to the writers out there. If you are a writer or an aspiring writer, I like to call you emerging writers because, I hope that you will see yourself as writers. I hope that you will continue to write. I hope you will listen to your inner voice. I hope that you won't allow others to judge you to the point where you lose your vision for what you really want to do and what you really want to say on the page. I think that as writers, we grow, we get better. The more we do, the better we get. And allow yourself the space to, kind of like figure it out and continue to write. Find something you want to write and, sit down and do it. That's what I would say.
I love that. That was good. You've been giving some good stuff tonight, girl.
Good. I'm very happy to be here. So,
Oh,
yes,
I'm so listen, I'm so humbled and just so grateful that you had it in your schedule to be available to be on with us tonight. I so appreciate you. You know that I tell you that all the time. I always tell her, listen, if you have a mentor, make sure you love up on them. Because Lonnie will tell you every time I talk to her, the first thing I say is, I'm so grateful for you. And I tell her how much I love and appreciate her just for her time to just take time with me, to mentor me, to love up on me, even through the hard stuff, even when she's, giving me that little foot in my back to say, get it together. Or if it's just encouraging me, just like she said, don't let anyone else steal your thunder. Like, make your corrections, but don't let it be so critical that it makes you want to give up. Because I've been there. She'll tell you, I've had moments where
we all
it
have.
was a little rough and I was like, that's it, I'm giving up. And she's like, no, you're not. So when you have a mentor that loves you through your flaws and all, you tell them how much you appreciate them. And so I say it publicly as I say it privately all the time. Love you and I'm so grateful for you. I'm humbled to just have your wisdom and knowledge grace my life. I'm so appreciative of you. But I hope you guys have enjoyed her. And those that are watching, go ahead. If you enjoyed her tonight, you know what to do. Put the hand claps in the comments for let her know you love and appreciate what she shared tonight. I hope it has helped someone. Thank you guys so much for watching. We so appreciate you. Remember, writers write. It
Mm-hmm.
is nothing to it but to do it. Did I just say that again? Yeah, it's nothing to it but to do it. Just get in there and put the pen to paper. One of the things that's been helping me is even when I don't know what to write, if I just start typing whatever's on my mind, eventually it starts to make a little sense and head me in the right direction. So
Exactly.
tonight, make sure you guys put that pen to paper and get some writing done. We're grateful for you. Remember, today is a great day to make a difference in the lives of those that are around you. I'm Lynn Tate, y'all, and this has been Pinned the Writer's Utopia. You all have a great night.